Atlas Vampire, Stockholm, Sweden, 1932. Listen closely, closer than you ever have, because the story you are about to hear is true. It begins not with a scream, but with the soft hiss of a Swedish winter settling over Stockholm in the bleak, early weeks of 1932. Imagine it. Narrow cobblestone lanes banked in dirty snow, the Baltic wind raking chimney tops, and gas lamps throwing sickly halos that can't quite pierce the fog. The city breathes in gray tones. The Great War is a fading scar, and the Great Depression has chilled every pocket to stone. Yet even in this hush, life clatters forward, trams groan across frozen rails, street vendors hawk roasted chestnuts, and the Royal Opera still opens its gilded doors, promising one gilded night beyond the cold. But beneath the copper spires and soot-blackened factories, another pulse beats a hidden rhythm of whispered superstition and modern dread. Sweden prides itself on science, on Lutheran order, on clean lines and cleaner consciences, yet rumors slip through the cracks like meltwater under ice. Fishermen claim they've hauled eels with human pale eyes. A tram conductor swears he saw a tall man with no reflection in a window pane, and an aging nurse in Stockholm speaks of patients who woke bloodless after quiet nights when no alarms rang. The police dismiss these tales as drink talk, as hunger dreams, until a single crime rips daylight off its hinges. Early on the frost-bitten morning of February 4th, 1932, a landlord forces open the door of a modest fourth-floor flat on Atlasgatan and finds 20-1-year-old Lily Lindström laid out like a porcelain effigy. No sign of struggle, no hint of poison, yet drained of every drop of life. Neat punctures mar her throat, and beside her on the rug glints an ordinary kitchen ladle, its rim lacquered red. The scene looks almost staged, a death portrait painted in silence, signed only by a faint iron scent clinging to the air. Word travels on icy breath. By noon, newsboys are crying vampire, Atlasgatan, on every corner. Housewives cross themselves, doctors scoff but lock their doors. And Detective Inspector Anders, judge to man, who trusts evidence and nothing else, stares at that ladle and feels the first chill of something logic cannot name. Over the next weeks, the trail will veer through morgues and catacombs, through opera balconies and abandoned blood banks. It will pit one exhausted inspector and one relentless forensic pathologist, Dr. Ingrid Nyström, against a creditor who walks with a surgeon's grace and kills with a legend's hunger. It will bleed into 8 long nights where silver bullets hiss, thermite roars like a dragon, and even victory tastes of rust. You will smell pea soup cooling on a wooden stove. Minutes before a knock that changes history, you will see footprints that start in snow and end at a bricked-up wall. You will hear the hiss of transfusion lines carrying more than medicine, and every time you think the nightmare has burned itself to ash, a single blood-bright ember will wink alive again, reminding you that horror, like winter, always finds a crack to seep through. So draw the curtains tight, stoke the fire high, and keep a silver cross or a rational mind close at hand. For once you step onto Atlasgatan with us, you will follow this real story down 8 shadowed chapters, and the only map you'll have is the soft, relentless thud of a stranger's heartbeat in the dark. When that heartbeat falters, when flames lick cathedral stone, when snow turns pink beneath a waning moon, you'll know you've reached the end, or what passes for an end in tales written with blood. Now, breathe in the coal smoke, feel the frost bite your cheeks, and listen as the night over Atlasgatan draws its first hungry breath. Chapter 1, Nightfall, over Atlasgatan. Listen closely, and picture Stockholm as it was in the dying weeks of January 1932, fog curling like gray snakes along the cobblestones, gas lamps flickering in the winter wind, and the river Mälaren whispering under a crust of dark ice. Snow fell in hesitant drifts, coating every rooftop with the pale hush of a city holding its breath. You can almost smell the coal smoke drifting from chimneys, mingling with the bittersweet scent of roasted chestnuts sold on street corners by men in threadbare coats. Horses' hooves clop somewhere beyond the mist, their iron shoes ringing against stone, and a tram clatters past the marble facade of the Royal Library. Now follow me north, to the working-class district of Atlasgatan, where modest tenements crowd narrow lanes, their windows glowing faint amber behind lace curtains. On Atlasgatan Street, named for the hulking Atlas factories that once belched steam and sweat, city life slows after dusk. Grocery stalls shutter, gramophones go silent, and the wind nips through alleyways smelling of stale beer and coal tar. Street urchins loiter around the corner cafe, trading jokes in Swedish slang, their laughter darting like sparrows before dissolving into shivers. In a cramped fourth-floor flat sits Lily Lindström, 21, her blonde curls pinned behind her ears, eyes rimmed with coal. By day she passes unnoticed, another face among thousands of migrants who fled rural poverty for the capital's promise. By night she sells forbidden comfort to lonely men, a trade whispered about but seldom acknowledged. Her clientele is small, carefully vetted. She is no reckless streetwalker. She keeps notes on each caller, initials, times, payment due, a little red ledger hidden beneath a loose floorboard. Safety, she believes, is found in routine, in methodical caution, in never stepping beyond the familiar radius of Atlasgatan. Tonight, she warms a tin of pea soup on the stove, humming an American jazz melody that reached her gramophone by way of Hamburg. The soup bubbles, scenting the air with dill and smoked pork. She drapes a worn dressing gown over goosebumped skin, then studies her reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror. Mascara clumps at her lashes. She wipes it away, steadying herself with practiced grace. A knock shivers the door. Taps pause, 2 taps. The code. She exhales and opens. We never learn what name the visitor gives, only that he stands. Tall, impeccably dressed in a dark overcoat, hat brim low, overshadowed eyes. His gloves are kid leather, pale as candle wax. He removes them slowly, politely, as though arriving for high tea. Lily smiles her professional smile, stepping aside to let him in. The door closes. Locks click. The city outside exhales, frost-white clouds dash oblivious. Hours later, midnight tolls from the spires of Stockholm, echoing across rooftops like the slow swing of a colossal pendulum. In room 14 of Atlasgatan 7, curtains stir, though no window is open. A gramophone needle skids against silence. The soup pot lies overturned on the rug, green liquid seeping into wool. Lily's ledger remains under the loose board untouched, and somewhere within that cramped flat, a ladle glints faintly, its bowl slick and dark. Morning. February 4th, 1932. A neighbor, Mrs. Sigrid Carlson, knocks at Lily's door, worried. The young woman missed their customary coffee chat. No answer. Mrs. Carlson fetches the landlord, a stout man who mutters about unpaid rent and idle frivolities. Together they force the lock. The door swings inward, and time seems to stall. There, on the sofa bed, lies Lily Lindström, bloodless, skin the color of polished ivory, lips bluish gray, eyelids half closed, as if in drowsy contemplation. 2 neat punctures blemish her throat, just above the collarbone. A crimson thread marks the path of something wiped away. On the floor beside the couch sits that kitchen ladle, its rim stained dark, as though someone dipped and drank slowly, deliberately before setting the utensil down with careful etiquette. No struggle mars the room, no furniture overturned, no valuables missing. It is a tableau of tidy horror. A single lamp still burns, casting long blades of light across wilted lilacs in a chipped vase. Stockholm's police arrive, led by Detective Inspector Anders Gösta. He is broad-shouldered, prematurely gray, and skeptical of superstition. Yet even he pauses at the punctures, at the ladle. at the curious absence of blood anywhere except a faint ring on the carpet beneath the sofa like a halo around the slain. He orders the room photographed, dusted, measured. Clerks sketch diagrams on foolscap paper, while the city outside continues its unknowing dance of commerce and gossip. Word spreads. Tabloids seize upon the grisly novelty. Vampire Eye Vassiston blares the afternoon headline. Newsboys shouted from street corners, their voices cracking in cold air. Housewives clutch their children. Doors are double bolted, and priests sermonize against sin's wages. In smoky coffee houses, students debate whether the killer is a madman, a ritualist, or some whisperer, true revenant risen from folklore. And beneath the city's veneer of Lutheran composure, a current of dread begins to flow. But listen closer still, for the story is only beginning. Inspector Gigita will soon discover anomalies that defy neat explanation. A stranger's footprint that starts in the middle of a snow-dusted hallway and ends at a bricked-up wall. A series of phone calls Lily received in the week before her death, traced to no existing exchange. And a witness who swears he saw a tall man vanish into a dead-end alley as though swallowed by the fog itself. Tonight, the lamps along Atlasgatan flicker once more. An icy drizzle taps at window panes like searching fingertips. A beggar mutters a lullaby as he shuffles past the tenement, unaware of the crime scene upstairs. Somewhere above, the spirit of Lily Lindström may be watching, waiting, yearning for justice in the city that drank her lifeblood dry. And somewhere, perhaps, the Atlas vampire walks again, gloves immaculate, thirst unquenched. Remember this moment, this hush before investigation turns to obsession. Before clues twist into nightmares, because once we descend further, there is no simple path back to daylight. Keep your coat collar high and your crucifix close. The night in Stockholm is long, and the shadows are deep enough to swallow even the bravest heart. Chapter 2. Footprints of Midnight. Hear the city stir, the very next morning. February 5th, 1932, as a pale sun strains to pierce Stockholm's cloud-stained sky. Horse-drawn milk carts rattle down Atlasgatan, their wheels crunching new-fallen snow that sparkles like ground glass. Yet, beneath that everyday bustle, a hush lingers as, though everyone senses the street itself is holding a secret too dreadful to name. Inside Police Precinct N14, the air reeks of coal smoke, damp wool, and stale coffee. Detective Inspector Anders Gösta leans over Lily Lindström's autopsy report, reading each line with a growing knot behind his sternum. Exsanguination, the coroner writes. Volume loss approximated at 4 to 5 liters. To puncture. Wounds, jugular adjacency, margins smooth, spacing consistent with incisors. Gigita exhales through his teeth. The coroner has underlined that last word twice, then added in parenthesis a single, incredulous phrase. No tearing, no ragged edges. Across the desk sits Dr. Ingrid Nyström, Stockholm's first female forensic pathologist, woman of needle-sharp intellect and icy composure. She taps a gloved finger on a second sheet, trace of saliva present, but enzyme denatured by unknown reagent. Blood type, 0 positive. No sexual assault, no defensive injuries. Liver temp suggests time of death circa 22 o'clock. She looks up, gray eyes unreadable. Whoever did this, Inspector, drained her methodically. At least an hour, maybe 2. Calm environment, no interruptions. Gigita's jaw flexes. But why the ladle? Ritual, fetish, or perhaps simple practicality? She lifts one brow. Fresh blood congeals quickly. A utensil keeps it pourable. He feels his stomach lurch, remembers the ring of dried crimson around the carpet. In the dim morgue light, Lily's skin had gleamed like carved marble, almost beautiful in its stillness. He swallows. Any prints on the ladle, smudged clean. Outside the office, a stenographer bangs at her typewriter. Each keystroke sounds like distant gunfire. Gijda flips to a list of telephone exchanges, calls traced to Lily's flat in the fortnight before her death. All it seems originated from payphones scattered across the city. Slussen, Sergels Torg, even deserted docks. No fingerprints, no witnesses. A ghost dialing numbers under orange streetlights, always asking for Firkin L, always hanging up when she answered. He rubs his temples. There is more. A single footprint cast in plaster from the boarding house. Hallway, size 44, men's shoe larger than average, heel worn unevenly. Yet the print begins in the center of the corridor's runner rug and ends abruptly against a blank wall, as if the owner stepped through stone. No earlier prints approach it, none lead away. Only that solitary impression, like the mark of a passing phantom. Gijda pockets the plaster mold in a canvas evidence bag and descends granite steps to the street. Snowflakes drift sideways on a wind sharp enough to peel skin. He draws his scarf tight, sets off toward Atlasgatan, notes crunching beneath well-soled boots. Let us walk beside him. Listener, down Karlberg's van, where tram conductors ring brass. Bells and bakers dust cardamom buns beneath glowing lamps. Each ordinary scene feels brittle, like stage scenery that will collapse if touched. People glance at the headlines, V, then avert their eyes as Gijda passes, recognizing the police badge pinned to his coat. Fear breeds silence. No. 7 Atlasgatan. The tenement looms, bricks stained umber by a century of soot. The landlord meets them at the doorway. Ole Vikström, a barrel-chested man with nicotine-yellow mustache. He unlocks Lily's flat, but hesitates on the threshold, crossing himself in a gesture half Catholic, half Nordic pagan. Gijda steps. Inside alone, the stench of stale soup and linseed oil lingers. Police seals still dangle from cupboards like tattered ribbons. He moves deliberately, mental camera clicking. Overturned pea soup pot. Gramophone needles skittered into silent grooves. Ledgers still hidden under floorboard. He kneels, pries the board loose, flips pages of the red notebook. Columns of neat, looping script catalog. Men, only by initials, and times. Account, oit, e30, Agaisidoi 1315. The last entry dated February 3rd simply reads, 21:45. A question mark? No initials? No payment. Sum? Just uncertainty, underlined twice. He exhales, feels the apartment's chill seep up through cracked linoleum. On the mantel rests a small framed photograph. Lily as a girl, standing beside a river, sunlight turning her hair to gold. Her smile is shy, hopeful, worlds away from the tableau of death now etched into Stockholm lore. He sets the photo back, gazes at the empty sofa where the body lay. In imagination, he sees blood pooling, a figure bending low, porcelain ladle poised at lips. A shiver skates his spine. A sudden knock startles him. Mrs. Sigrid Carlson peers around the doorframe, cheeks apple red from the cold. Inspector, I thought you might want this. She holds out a bundle, a linen handkerchief wrapped around something metallic. He unwraps it to reveal a silver cigarette case engraved with Art Deco chevrons. Inside, a single Turkish cigarette and a folded ticket stub. Phoenix, Biographen Road D. Seat the 8th to the 31st of January 1932. The film listed, Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi. He raises an eyebrow. Mrs. Carlson wrings her hands. I found it behind the radiator while cleaning. Must belong to him. Gijda slips the case into an evidence pouch, thanks her, and scans the radiator. Rusted claw feet, gap just wide enough to hide a pack. He scribbles a note. Suspect possibly obsessed with vampire lore. Attends late-night films. Another thread to chase. Night deepens again over Stockholm. Wind rattles shutters like dry bones. In distant old town alleyways, church bells clang, unevenly as if their metal tongues bite back at the dark. Detective Gösta and Dr. Nyström convene in the morgue after hours. Autopsy photos spread across a zinc table. Nyström points to faint bruising on Lily's inner wrist. "Look here," gripping Mark's thumb and 2 fingers. "Whoever took her blood," he steadied her arm while tapping the vein. "Professional, medical training." Gösta nods slowly. Possibilities. Race. Clandestine blood fetish cults rumored among decadent bohemians. Battlefield medics from the Great War, traumatized into madness. Itinerant quacks who promise youth through transfusion. But another thought intrudes, older, colder. Tales of the Draugr, the undead of Icelandic sagas, who drink life's warmth and walk among fog banks. He dismisses it, yet cannot erase the memory of that single footprint ending at a wall. Later, he trudges home across Vasabron Bridge, moonlight silvering the ice below. Snow crunches louder when one walks alone at midnight. Halfway across, he hears an echoing tap behind him, footsteps, matching his own cadence exactly, then halting when he halts. He swings about, hand on revolver. Only emptiness, swirling snow, the distant rumble of a tram. He quickens pace. Again the echo. Crunch, pause, crunch. He spins, sees a dim figure at Bridge's far end, a tall silhouette in a brimmed hat, collar obscuring the jaw. Street lamp flickers, and the figure is gone. Gösta's breath feathers white. His pulse drums in his ears. Perhaps just fatigue, he tells himself. Yet he does not sheath the revolver until he reaches his flat, double locks the door, and lights every lamp. Meanwhile, papers fuel hysteria. The Stockholm-stydningen prints an illustration of a caped monster hovering over a red eyes glaring. Churches report pews filled by the fearful seeking absolution. Apothecaries sell out of garlic garlands, an old folk remedy from immigrant quarter myths. And in smoky beer halls, men boast they will hunt the fiend for the right reward. Laughter, brittle as icicles. But horror has a ripple effect. 2 nights after the murder, constables answer a noise complaint in Sekdermum. They find a butcher named Eric Siesbaum barricaded in his shop, crucifix nailed to the door. He babbles about a pale customer who visited at closing time, bought 6 pints of pig's blood for sausage, yet never picked them up. When pressed, Siesbaum screams that the man had no reflection in the shop's glass countertop. Dr. Nyström interviews him. He trembles uncontrollably, pulse racing. She notes possible delirium tremens from alcohol withdrawal. Still, his story matches other scattered reports. A tall man, immaculate gloves, soft cultured voice, eyes that glint like wet coal, and an unwholesome interest in blood. Patterns emerge like stains beneath whitewash. February 8th, twilight bleeds across the horizon. G. Jetta and 2 uniforms stake out the Phoenix Cinema, hoping the killer returns for another late-night screening. Snow drifts against the awning where posters advertise Frankenstein, The Mummy, Dracula, Hollywood's new nightmares. Ticket stamp programs. The lobby reeks of pipe smoke and spilled corn Bergvin. Inside row D, seat 8 remains empty. Film reels clatter. Shadows dance huge upon the silver screen. Lugosian tones, I never drink wine, drawing uneasy laughter. But no suspect appears. Hours pass. Crowds depart, scarves pulled over chins. Jijtus men yawn, bones aching from cold benches. Then a projectionist shuffles up. He remembers a peculiar gentleman who watched Dracula twice on January 31st, never moving except to lick his lips during feeding scenes. Bought a box of chocolate-coated blood orange candies, devoured them methodically. Left behind the silver cigarette case when the usher dimmed lights for cleaning. I kept it in Lost and Found. The projectionist shrugs, until a broad-shouldered fellow in a nurse's coat claimed it yesterday, said it belonged to his patient. Even knew there'd be 1 Turkish cigarette inside. Jijda stiffens. Describe him. The projectionist hesitates. Hard to see. face half in shadow. But his gloves white, not black. Surgical, maybe. Back at headquarters, records show no hospital nurse matching that description. The cigarette case now sits in Gijda's desk drawer, as if mocking him with its polished gleam. He snaps it shut, extinguishes his lamp, and for a heartbeat sees reflected in window glass behind his own tired eyes the faint outline of a tall, hat-brimmed figure watching from the hallway. He whirls. The corridor is vacant, save for a swaying light bulb and the distant rumble of typewriters. He wipes sweat from his brow, wonders if sleepless nights have birthed phantoms. Yet somewhere in Stockholm, listener perhaps framed by an attic window or drifting along a fog-moored quay, a pair of eyes blinks open, hungry for the taste of warmth pulsing beneath human skin. The Atlas vampire is neither myth nor beast of Transylvanian fiction, but a mind wielding scalpels and rituals. Cloaked in civility, slipping through the city like mist through keyholes. It has fed once and will feed again. Keep your curtains drawn tight and your bedside lamp burning through the night. 4. Chapter 3 draws nearer, and with it comes a darkness thick enough to drown the light of reason itself. Chapter 3 Blood. In the snow. Listen now as the calendar lunges toward February 11th, 1932. Heavy clouds smother Stockholm, muffling the city beneath a quilt the color of old pewter. A blizzard has swirled in from the Gulf of Bothnia, erasing street signs, clogging tram rails, and sculpting Atlasgatan into a white corridor where even echoes seem to freeze mid-air. From dawn until dusk, nothing moves except swirling powder and the black wings of crows wheeling overhead, crows that settle, now and then, upon chimney tops to croak an omen nobody wishes to translate. Detective Inspector Anders Gösta has been awake for 36 hours, eyes burning like cigarettes in their sockets. He stands inside the precinct's makeshift incident room, a former storage loft where frost creeps along rafters and pins fresh photographs to a corkboard already bristling with twine and labels. Each thread radiates from Lily Linda's portrait like veins branching from a stopped heart. One strand leads to the plaster footprint, another to witness sketches of the tall man, a third to that silver cigarette case, now dusted for prints that simply are not there. A knock echoes. Dr. Ingrid Nyström enters, cheeks raw from the cold, a slim case clutched to her chest. She sets it on the table and undoes the clasps. Inside lies a single test tube, capped with black wax, half filled by something dark and viscous. She nods toward it. Found in the alley behind Somerton Hospital. Orderly thought it was discarded pig's blood from the surgical theater, but our chemical panel says human, type A, Rh negative, mixed with citric acid. Gijda frowns. Anticoagulant? Precisely. Someone's storing blood, keeping it fresh. He lets out a breath that ghosts the air. Does it match Lily's? No. Different type. Which means it isn't trophy blood from her murder. It's a supply. She holds his gaze. Someone's preparing. Stockpiling. Lightning cracks somewhere beyond the snow, an unlikely winter thunderclap that startles them both. Nyström snaps the case shut. I also received the toxicology results on the saliva. She opens a notebook. Traces of atropine and scopolamine belladonna alkaloids. Low dose, subanesthetic, enough to paralyze voluntary movement. Dull pain. Leave the victim conscious, but compliant. Gijda imagines Lily's wide eyes, lungs pumping while a stranger calmly drains her veins. He swallows bile, so it wasn't just bloodlust, it was procedure. Nyström nods, expression granite. Whoever did this had medical knowledge or learned it somewhere unforgiving. She pauses. Battlefield surgeons sometimes used atropine during the war to calm panic. Many never readjusted. The blizzard hurls icy pellets against window panes like thrown gravel. A constable bursts in, face white as the storm outside. Inspector, you'd best come to plan. Another one. Within minutes, Gijda and Nyström are in a police sled grinding through knee-deep drifts. Hooves thud, steam billows from the horses' muzzles. Sirens wail thinly sound, dampened by snow. When they reach Odenplan Square, lamplight flickers over an ugly vignette. A man lies, half submerged in a snowbank, beside the entrance to a shuttered apothecary. Crimson fans across the drifts in stark petals. The scene looks almost surgical against the white. The victim's coat is open, shirt torn away, chest splayed as though for autopsy. No footprints surround him. The blizzard has scoured everything clean. Yet 2 familiar punctures mark the carotid, flawless as ink strokes. Nyström kneels, gloved fingers tracing the frozen skin. Body still warm inside. She murmurs, murdered less than an hour ago, despite the cold. She lifts his left hand, distinct callus on the forefinger, the kind violinists earn from years of bowing. In his coat pocket they find a playbill, Royal Swedish Opera. Stravinsky, retrospective tonight's performance cancelled due to weather. Gijda feels the wind slice through his coat. He stalks culture halls, cinemas, concert houses, hospitals, places where blood beats hot beneath sophistication. As they load the body onto a stretcher, a street sweeper approaches, cap clutched against the gale. Saw a man, sir, he stammers through chattering teeth. Tall fellow, white gloves. He hailed a taxi. Not 5 minutes before you came. Gijta's pulse leaps. Which cab company? The sweeper points. Atlas taxi. The inspector wheels to a constable. Find every Atlas cab booked from Odenplan between 7:15 and 7:30 p.m. Radio. The dispatcher. Cross-check passenger logs. He doesn't mention aloud what churns in his mind. Atlas radio taxioed Atlasgatan Atlas. Vampire. Coincidence folds into pattern with a hiss like wet coal on flame. Midnight. The storm eases to a fine dust of glitter. Gijda stands in the silent nave of St. John's Church, summoned by its priest, Father Elof Henriksson, who found a letter wedged beneath the heavy oak doors. The envelope is vellum, edges singed, addressed to those who hunt in vain. Inside, a page written in crimson ink or something disturbingly like it. I am the lamp of darkness, in every age. I walk cloaked in your unbelief. You call me beast, Draugr, Nosferatu, yet I am simply hunger, purified. Seek me again at the thaw, when blood runs beneath cobblestone. The sun grows weary of rising. Bring your crucifixes and your guns. I shall bring thirst of VG, GSTA grips. The letter, until it crinkles. AV, he mutters. Atlas vampire. Father Henriksson crosses himself, voice trembling. I locked the doors after Vespers. No footprints in the nave, no signs of entry. It was simply there. Nyström arrives moments later, eyes widening as she reads. Inks, still wet. She sniffs it, frowns. Iron, proteinaceous. This is blood mixed with gall and lampblack. Gijda pockets the letter. They step outside. Moonlight paints the snow like tarnished silver. The inspector's gaze drifts to the row of angels carved along the church. Facada faces eroded by 300 Swedish winters until each grin looks almost skeletal. February 12th. The city wakes to a bizarre announcement. The Swedish National Blood Bank receives an anonymous endowment of 10 glass flasks labeled Type AB. No donor name, no paperwork, only a calling card slipped inside the crate. The card reads, Pour l'Internationale du Sang, and below it, a single drop drawn in vermilion ink. Inside Gijda's office, the crate rests atop a desk blotter stained by sleepless coffee rings. He stares at the flasks, then at the calling card. He's taunting us, he says, using the institutions meant to save lives as staging grounds. Nyström pinches the bridge of her nose. If the pattern holds, he'll strike again in 48 hours. That's how long stored blood stays viable at room temperature. Gijda nods, resolves to gamble on psychology. We flush him out, make him think his Vita will be destroyed, force his hand. They release a statement to the evening papers. Unclaimed blood donation to be incinerated due to contamination. Headlines scream, police to burn vampire blood. Frenzy ignites anew. Rumors swirl that clerks at the blood bank have resigned, terrified of cursed serum exploding like demons in glass. Night falls. Snowpack flashes blue under arc lamps. Gauged up positions, plainclothes, officers around the blood bank, all steer. Granite, building off Kungsholmen, its basement, stockroom chilled to a constant 3 degrees Celsius. He himself waits in a cramped observation booth overlooking the loading bay, revolver heavy in hand. Hours pass. Frost feathers across the single pane of glass. At 1:17 a.m., a dark figure materializes in the alley, silhouette sharp against snow. It moves with preternatural stillness, white gloves catching moonlight like twin shards of bone. Gaicha's breath stalls. The figure approaches the side door, produces something, perhaps a skeleton, keyworks the lock in 10 seconds. The door creaks in, slips the intruder. Gijda barks through a speaking tube. Now, officers converge, boots thudding. They flood the corridor, flash lamps slicing darkness, but the side door gapes open to emptiness and drifting snow. Inside, corridors snake left and right. Wet, footprints gleam, then vanish halfway down the tiled floor. No sound, no movement, as though the figure evaporated like breath on glass. In the stockroom, the crate lies smashed, all 10 flasks gone. Yet on a stainless table sits something new, a small brass phlebotomy syringe from the Great War. Needle long as a knitting needle, its barrel etched with French inscriptions, and beneath it a note inked in crimson. You burn nothing that I desire. I take what is mine. Gijda stares at the empty space where a man should be, where logic says a man must be. He smells only disinfectant and iron. Somewhere, a distant tram groans across tracks like the sigh of a sleeping beast. The following afternoon, newspapers spew carnage once more. Hospital orderly found syringe missing. The victim is Jan Bergström, 22, student nurse, who'd covered night shift at Stockholm. His body was discovered in a linen closet, throat sliced, blood carefully collected into surgical bags. Under his fingernails, they find a single thread of white cotton glove material, but no prints, no trail, no hope. Stockholm quakes. Families move into relatives' flats, afraid to sleep alone. Cafes barricade windows with wooden planks. Priests bless doorways. Rabbis recite psalms. Even skeptics mutter charms taught by superstitious grandmothers from the northern forests. Gijda and Nyström meet in a candlelit corner of Caf Regina, hands clasped around steaming mugs of coffee laced with a snow tapped against stained glass windows, painting the world beyond in haunted colors. Nyström unfurls a new dossier for unsolved exsanguination cases in Sweden over the last decade. 2 in Malmö, 1 in Gothenburg, 1 in Uppsala. All victims young women, all bodies drained, all within walking distance of railway hubs. She taps the final column. Witness saw a tall man wearing gloves, a pattern older than Lily, perhaps older than memory. Gijda leans back, eyes aching. We're not hunting a lone crime. We're stalking a migration. He lowers his voice. I need help from outside official channels, someone who understands the myth behind the method. Nyström arches an eyebrow. You mean occultists? He nods. There's a scholar at Uppsala University, Professor Carl Rittersvärd, expert on Scandinavian vampiric lore. He's eccentric, possibly mad, but he might know what feeds this ritual. Nyström exhales, candle flame winking in her eyes. Then we go tomorrow. But be warned, Anders' legends have ways of rewriting fact until they swallow reason whole. As they leave the cafe, wind rattles the sign above the door metal, squealing like distant screams. Snowflakes swirl in frantic eddies, each glinting under gaslight like tiny shards of bone. Somewhere beyond Kungsgatan, a church bell tolls an hour that feels neither night nor morning but a time in between. A liminal hour when boundaries thin, and in a garret flat, overlooking the frozen Reederfjorden, a tall figure in a nurse's coat carefully transfers blood from surgical bags into slender cut glass decanters. He hums a lullaby older than Sweden herself, a song that might once have soothed plague victims dying by candlelight. The blood glints ruby under a single lamp. He lifts a decanter, tilts it to his lips, and sips as one might savor a rare vintage. When the last drop slides down his throat, he opens a leather-bound ledger and writes, "Stockholm, 10 souls consumed." Still the hunger grows. He dips the pen again, its nib a silver fang, and underlines the date twice exactly as Lili Lindström had done when she jotted the time of her unknown visitor. Remember this taste of iron on the tongue, listener, for the next chapter will draw you deeper into corridors where science flickers and superstition roars in, where the living learn that sometimes the only difference between a surgeon's scalpel and a monster's fang is the poetry of the cut. Chapter 4: Ink of the Undead. Here the rails groan beneath the early morning express as Detective Inspector Anders Gösta and Dr. Ingrid Nyström flee Stockholm for Uppsala on February 13, 1932. Outside the frost-edged windows, Sweden rolls past in desolate monochrome, birch forests skeletal against flat pewter skies, snow-buried fields where lone windmills turn like exhausted sentries, half-frozen streams flashing dull steel between drifts. In the cramped second-class carriage, steam pipes hiss and passengers wrap themselves in woolen scarves, murmuring about the vampire that drinks cities dry. Every crinkle of a newspaper seems a whispered prayer or curse. Gija sits rigid, coat collar up, revolver tucked inside his waistband. Sleep eludes him. Each blink produces phantom images of Lily's pallid face, of a violinist sprawled crimson on Odenplan, of empty footprints that begin nowhere. Across from him, Nyström pores over a folder of yellowed case summaries. Malmd, 1924. Victim Anna Bergen. Gothenburg, 1927. Victim Clara Hagström. She has annotated the margins with anatomical sketches of carotid punctures, as neat as calligraphy. She speaks without looking up. All signs point to a traveling pattern every 3 years, moving along railway lines, doubling back whenever suspicion fades. Our killer is migratory, patient, methodical. The train whistle keens, a banshee wail lost in wind. As iron wheels hammer the frozen rails, Gijda feels in his coat pocket the priest's blood ink letter, the brass syringe, the silver cigarette case, trophies, riddles, breadcrumbs. He remembers the line, "I walk cloaked in your unbelief." A cold rage settles in his marrow. He mutters, "We'll uncloak you yet." The city of Uppsala greets them beneath a dome of slate cloud. Gothic spires of the cathedral rake the sky like black claws, and the river Firus crawls sluggishly under ice. University courtyards lie hushed, cloaked in snow. Only the distant chanting of Latin declensions drifts from lecture halls like ghostly chorales. Professor Karl Rittersvärd resides in Universityst's north wing, a cluttered warren of cabinets crammed with rune stones, taxidermied bats, and brittle folios bound in human gray vellum. A placard on the oak door reads Occult, Nordica, and Comparative Angstology by appointment. Inside, stale pipe smoke drapes the air. The professor himself is a gaunt figure in a velvet waistcoat. Pince-nez perched on a hawk-like nose, fingertips perpetually stained with India ink. He greets them as if they are overdue volumes from the library. "Ah, Inspector Gösta, Dr. Nyström. Stockholm's panic has ruffled even my somnolent sanctuary." His voice is rich, but cracked, like a gramophone record played too often. "You seek counsel upon noctivagant feeders." Nyström lifts an eyebrow. "You mean vampires?" The professor smiles thinly. "Labels are conveniences. Predation is fact." He gestures them toward a circular table strewn with manuscripts. One unfurls beneath a brass weight, a medieval vellum sheet depicting a cloaked figure bending over a prone maiden, scarlet tempera dripping from painted lips. Rittersverd taps the text margin. Old Swedish folk ballad, Blodfigelins, Klagsta, Bloodbird's Lament. It speaks of a white-gloved doctor of night who roams from farm to farm, taking his tithe of beating hearts every third winter. Always, he leaves a calling mark, a ladle or drinking horn beside the corpse. Gitchta's breath catches. A ladle. Just like Lily's scene, Rittersverd nods, eyes glittering. The ladle reappears throughout Baltic folklore. Not merely a vessel but a rite. To drink by ladle, rather than mouth, proclaims mastery over savage instinct, elevates the act to sacrament. Your killer is steeped in myth and wishes you to know. Nyström flips to another page. A 17th century field diary from the Polish Deluge Wars, describing an army surgeon rumored to bleed prisoners and bottle the harvest for alchemical longevity. Marginalia note his flight north after a siege scene, boarding a vessel bound for Norland, and that his name was Anselm Valerius. Nyström's pulse accelerates. Avida initials in the church letter. Rittersverd steeples his ink-blackened fingers. Legend claims Valerius learned to anesthetize victims with nightshade tincture, drain blood through surgical puncture, and vanish before dawn. Over centuries, sightings of a tall, white-gloved Dr. Valerius surface whenever famine or plague depopulate villages. Dead men leave no pursuers. Gitchta frowns. You suggest a single man roaming for 300 years. Impossible. The professor shrugs, candlestick flames darting across his spectacles. Or perhaps a lineage successive disciples, adopting the mantle, the methods, the moniker. A cult of one passed down like hereditary sin. He pushes forward a tattered railway logbook, dated 1891, written in spidery hand. Valerius & Co. Surgical. Supplies freight to Stockholm, Gothenburg. Mound, he points to the company's seal. Twin serpents coiled around a crucible, the same sigil etched. On the brass syringe, GHT's skin prickles. Nyström whispers. He travels in plain sight as a medical supplier. She remembers the white-gloved intruder at the blood bank, the nurse's coat, the surgical precision. We must trace that company. Rittersverd trails them to the door. If lore holds true, Valerius venerates a lunar schedule. The first full moon after the thaw is his harvest feast. Tonight's moon is waxing. He presses a cracked leather journal into Gitchta's hands. My notes on ritualistic use them or burn them. But hurry. Hunger, once awakened, devours caution. Snowflakes the size of coins fall as they step into the courtyard. Somewhere an unseen choir practices Easter hymns, their voices drifting high and pure over the frozen river. Yet amid that sacred harmony, Gitchta hears an undertone, a low, almost imperceptible humming, like a wine glass stroked by a wet finger. He pivots. At the far gate stands a man in a long black coat, hat brim shadowing his face. A gloved hand touches the iron bars in silent salute. Nyström turns blinkened. The gate swings emptily, only snow swirling in its wake. Back in Stockholm, night rushes in with a violet hush. The waxing gibbous moon hangs above the city like a jaundiced eye. Gitchta and Nyström decamp to the sprawling archives of the Swedish Railway Directorate, trawling freight manifests by candle stubs and stiff fingers. Hours bleed by until Nyström slams a ledger with sudden triumph. Found it Valerius & Co., registered as a medical courier in 1921. Headquarters listed at Atlasgatan 49. Gitchta exhales a bitter laugh. Atlasgatan again. And 49 is a condemned warehouse 2 blocks from Lily's flat. He snatches his coat. We go now. They assemble a small strike team, 6 constables, revolvers holstered, kerosene lanterns and flash pistols at the ready. Snow whips down as they approach Atlasgatan 49, a hulking red brick shell with boarded windows and iron shutters sagging like rusted eyelids. The sign over the loading bay hangs askew. Valerius & Co. Surgical imports. The paint flakes in curling scabs. The ampersand resembles a crooked serpent. Inside, lantern light reveals corridors lined with empty crates, dust-shrouded gurneys, and broken glass. A fetid draft carries the metallic tang of something long spoiled. The team advances, footsteps echoing across creekwood floors. At a junction, the group splits. 2 constables toward the office wing, Gösta and Nyström down a ramp to the lower storage vaults. The ramp descends into darkness so total it swallows the lantern glow like ink drinking water. At the basement threshold, their breath fogs in front of their faces, though the air feels warm. Nyström whispers, "Do you smell that?" A coppery sweetness mingled with formaldehyde. She lifts her lantern. Rows of glass demijohns shimmer on steel racks, each filled with viscous ruby fluid. Handwritten labels in looping Latin read, Sang Femin Type O, SANG, Infant, Type A. At the far end, a massive oak table sprawls beneath a surgical lamp, humming softly on battery power. Upon its scarred surface lie antique syringes, bone-handled scalpels, coiled tubing, and in the center, an open ledger. Twin 2, the one found in the assassin's garret. Gösta flips it. Stockholm, 12 souls consumed. Desired reserve, 100 liters. A skitter echoes above them, quick, light, deliberate. Gösta draws his revolver. Nyström catches sight of movement, a white-gloved hand retreating behind a pillar. She signals. They creep forward, breaths synchronized, with pounding hearts. Suddenly lanterns gutter. The battery lamp flickers and dies. Darkness crashes like a lid slamming shut. A whisper glides across the room in sing-song Swedish. The heart, once emptied, weighs less than a sparrow. Hush now. Nyström's fingers brush Gösta's sleeve. She feels him tense, revolver raising. Something cold grazes her neck. A fingertip perhaps, or steel. She whirls, swings the lantern. The flame sputters back to life, revealing nothing. Gunfire erupts upstairs. Shouts. A scream sliced off mid-throat. Gösta lunges toward the stairwell. Nyström behind him. They emerge onto the ground floor to face chaos. 2 constables lie collapsed, throats open, blood pooling across dusty planks. Another staggers, clutching a stomach wound, eyes rolled white. The remaining officer fires blindly into shadows. Bullets ricochet off girders with whines like tortured strings. Someone darts through the rafters faster than any man should move, coattails fluttering like torn wings. Nyström drags the wounded constable behind crates, presses gauze. Gösta aims upward. He glimpses the figure perch on a crossbeam, silhouetted against a broken skylight. Moonlight reveals immaculate white gloves, each fingertip shiny with wet crimson. A voice pours down, calm and cultured. "Destroy the barrels, if you wish, Inspector. My cellars run deep and old as plague pits. You will thirst before I starve." Then the figure springs, impossibly far, crashes through the skylight in a burst of shattered glass, disappearing into star-strewn night as lightly as smoke ridden by wind. Gösta barrels outside, revolver barking. Snow muffles the shots. He scans. Rooftops only whirling flakes, and the distant spires of the cathedral. Silence dot behind him. Flames leap inside the warehouse. A lantern overturned in struggle has found dusty crates. Fire licks greedily at wooden beams. Constables haul bodies, coughing through smoke. Nyström emerges last, face streaked with soot and shock. The blaze roars, reflecting molten gold in her eyes. She chokes. We found his bloodstock, but he found the rest of us. Sirens howl as fire brigades arrive, but the inferno consumes Valerius & Co. Surgical imports until walls groan and collapse. Sparks whirl into the sky, mingling with snowflakes, a storm of ash and ice. Gösta watches, fists clenched, wondering if the vampire lingers in the crowd, smiling behind some mundane face. Dawn, Atlasgatan smolders. Gutted beams, standing like blackened ribs. Investigators comb charred debris, unearthing twisted scalpel blades and melted glass hearts. But in the rubble's heart, they uncover a metal strongbox, scorched yet intact. Inside, a single ladle, polished mirror bright, engraved with Latin, primum sanguis nan, obliviscar, the first blood I shall not forget. Beneath it rests a clipping from a 1918 Stockholm newspaper. Field surgeon saves hundreds in Spanish flu ward. The surgeon's photograph shows a tall man in a nurse's coat, face half-shadowed, gloved hand holding a syringe like a pen. The caption, Dr. A. Valerius Nyström, reads aloud, voice hoarse from smoke. He was a hero once. Gigita's eyes burn from more than soot. Heroes and monsters diverge by a single step, he murmurs. Somewhere he took a tan, never looked back. He pockets the ladle, its surface cold, despite the fire's heat. He plans a harvest at full moon, he says. We have 4 nights. He lifts his gaze to the ashen dawn, to the silent rooftops where snow settles on stone like scalpels on flesh. Next time, we end this. But the wind keens low across Atlasgatan, carrying with it the faintest echo of laughter, soft, distant, hungry. Remember this taste of smoke and iron, listener. The trail now winds into catacombs of myth, where charred saints cannot follow, and every footstep may be answered by a shadow wearing your own shape. Keep a lantern by your bedside, and silver crucifix on your chest. Chapter 5 will drag us deeper, still into blood rites and lunar hunger, where the boundary between physician and predator bleeds away. Drop by precious drop. Chapter 5, Moontide of Crimson. Close your eyes for a moment and feel the air of Stockholm on February 15th, 1932, 4 nights before the full moon. A brittle calm blankets the city. Fresh snow has muffled every hoofbeat, every tram bell, turning familiar avenues into pale, silent canyons. Yet beneath that quilt of white, fear flutters like a trapped moth. Curtains twitch whenever boots crunch. Past, shopkeepers bless door frames with birch twigs dipped in holy water. Butcher stalls now sell cloves of garlic alongside winter sausage. Detective Inspector Anders Gösta no longer sleeps. He stalks his office at Precinct 14, lantern throwing. Grotesque shadows that lurch across walls webbed with maps and photographs. Strings crisscross the city's blueprint, all converging on a single point. The catacombs beneath Katarina Church in Ossuary long sealed, forgotten even by the sextons who polished the sanctuary's brass. The ledger salvaged from the warehouse lists an inventory for that underground vault. Reserve barrels, X60 liters, steel cauldrons for cherub mask stew. At the bottom, one line glows like fresh ink. Hekiing 19-2-2348. Dr. Ingrid Nyström leans over the map, her steady surgeon's fingers tracing back alleys and service tunnels. When he lost Atlasgatan 49, he pivoted to ground older, holier. She shivers despite the stove's heat. Bones of 30,000 plague victims lie under Katarina, perfect refrigeration, and no one will hear a scream below hymnstones. From the corridor floats a metallic crash. Both spin, nerves taut, but it is only a rookie constable dropping a tin mug. Jumpiness has infected the entire precinct. Gigita rubs grit from bloodshot eyes. We raid the catacombs tonight. Nyström's gaze hardens. We'll need more than bullets. He moves too fast, heels too clean. She opens a velvet pouch. Inside gleam silver-tipped flechettes, each no longer than a sewing needle. Forged by a jeweler friend in stand true silver alloyed with iron. If myth has any root, the metal should slow him. Gigita hefts a flechette, its point glistening like frost. Let's give superstition a badge and a gun. Dusk bleeds purple across the Somerton skyline. Katarina Church rises on its hilltop, like a leviathan's spine, baroque cupola black against the dying light. Snow-laden firs surround the cemetery, branches sagging in mournful arcs. Constables in padded coats form a perimeter, lamps hooded to avoid warning the quarry below. Inside the nave, a choir rehearses Lenten hymns, their voices swelling through vaults of golden plaster. They do not know the hunt unfolding beneath their feet. Gijda leads the descent, a narrow stairwell spiraling from a side chapel into chilled darkness. Each step creaks with centuries of dust. Lanterns hiss, casting weak halos that barely pierce the gloom. Down, down, until stone gives way to packed earth, and the smell changes stale, sweet, almost vegetal, as though the ground itself exudes rot. At the stair's foot, a low archway yawns. Beyond lies the ossuary, its ceiling just high enough to force a man to stoop, its walls with femurs and skulls set in macabre mosaics. Eye sockets watch their passing like Beatles' rosaries. They spread out, boots sinking into damp clay. Nyström crouches beside a row of barrels stamped 1916 med. She pries a bung. Clotted blood sloshes inside, surface shimmering in lantern light. Still, liquid mixed with anticoagulant. He's fermenting it. She dips a test strip. It turns ebony, hemolysis advanced. If injected, it would kill in minutes. Nearby, a constable finds a sack of embroidered masks, porcelain cherub faces painted with serene smiles, eye holes wide and empty. Gijda lifts one, feels porcelain cold as a corpse's tongue, a ritual costume. He imagines worshippers marching. Lantern-lit cherub grins, dripping red. A sudden clang echoes through the vault's metal on stone. Distant yet close enough to jolt every heart. Lanterns swing. Shadows leap. Gijda signals, finger to lips, and the squad advances through a tunnel lined with ribs of ancient brick. Moisture beads on mortar like sweat. The tunnel opens into a cavernous crypt whose ceiling is lost in blackness. Here, an immense copper vat dominates the center, rivets green with verdigris, steam venting from a bronze dragon's mouth welded to its rim. Copper pipes snake from the vat to a series of marble basins carved with angelic reliefs broke beauty, perverted into gutters for human blood. Scarlet residue paints the channels. Some basins still brim, surfaces trembling as if alive, and there silhouetted before the vat stands the tall figure in a white operating gown, sleeves rolled to immaculate gloves. His face is masked by one of the cherub visages, but his eyes burn through slits, pinpoints of phosphorescent blue. A stethoscope dangles from his neck like a noose of silver. Gijda's revolver snaps up. Valerius, his shout cracks like a musket shot. Constables fan out, weapons trained. The figure tilts its porcelain head, voice resonant behind clay. Inspector punctual, as always. He gestures to the vat. Behold, the elixir our pale age forgot. Blood, cooled by cathedral stone, tempered by faith's echo. It will sustain me, and any favored disciple. Nyström steps forward, flechette pistol raised. Favored. You. Drain them like cattle. The cherub mask turns toward her. Doctor, you of all should cherish the cure of mortality. Imagine a world where no surgeon must bury another child, where no plague empties cradles. I offer continuity, life refined. Gijda snarls. You offer murder. He fires. The bullet slams into the porcelain forehead mask, shatters in a blossom of shards. For an instant, the face beneath is revealed, skin pale as wax cheekbones, cut sharp lips tinted bruise violet. Yet the eyes are startlingly young, glacial blue, unmarred by age. Blood trickles from a graze on his brow. He licks it, smiles. Silver, he muses. Ah, you learn. He moves. One moment he stands at the vat, the next he is among them, coat swirling like wings. A constable screams, the creature yanks him close, bites through scarf and flesh, drinks with obscene intimacy. Silvery flechettes pepper his back. He falters, roars a sound more wolf than man, then hurls the dying constable into two others. Bones cracking like dry sticks. Lanterns. Crash. Oil flares. Shadows. Strobe. Nyström fires. Again 3 flechettes, glinting. 2 miss, but the third buries in his thigh. He staggers, snarls, yanks it free, skin sealing almost faster than blood can escape. Silver slows, he laughs, breath misting. It does not kill. Jejeda lunges with his last silver round aimed straight at the heart. Valerius whips a forearm, sending the revolver flying. With the same motion, he seizes Gija's throat, lifting him off the ground. The inspector feels fingers like iron clamps, cold, inexorable. Valerius studies him, curiosity, mingled with something like admiration. Why persist, Inspector? You know how swiftly hope bleeds dry. Nyström screams, grabbing a lantern, smashing its glass against Valerius's chest. Kerosene drenches the gown. Her match flares whoosh. Flames coil up Valerius like living serpents. His coat erupts in blazing petals. He howls, dropping Gijda. The cavern fills with orange glare and scorched copper stench. He backhands Nyström. She flies against bone wall, ribs fracturing. But the fire spreads, cloth banners ignite. Dried splatters on marble hiss and flare. Steam boils from the vat, copper shrieking. Valerius tears the burning gown free, revealing a body latticed with scars that pulse like pale worms beneath translucent skin. I have walked out of fires worse than this, he snarls, but pain keens through his voice. He leaps inhuman, arc vanishing into shadows above. From high rafters, his voice echoes, ragged. The moon rises soon. You cannot drown a tide with sparks. Then silence, save for the roar of spreading flame. Gijda drags Nyström clear. Constables stagger after him, 3 wounded, 1 lifeless. He barks orders up, while heat slams them like a furnace door. Behind, pressurized copper seems fail boom, a geyser of half-coagulated blood and steam jets skyward, coating skull walls in slick crimson rain. The cavern lights like hell's own kill. They burst onto the cemetery grounds, coughing blood-tinged phlegm, hair singed, skin blistered. Snow hisses where embers land, carving pockmarks of molten sorrow. From vents in the hillside, pinkish steam belches under moonlight, as though the earth itself is exhaling centuries of bottled screams. Fire brigades swarm, but flames licking. Catacomb mouths elude hoses, fueled by barrels of human fuel. Gijda sits in the snow, clutching Nyström's gloved hand. Her breath rasps, eyes dazed, yet alert. Ribs cracked, maybe punctured lung. She croaks, still breathing. He compresses her fingers. You saved my life. She shakes her head. Not yet. She coughs crimson threads. He'll need fresh stores. He'll strike at the hospital again, or the orphanage somewhere. Blood flows unchecked. Her pupils dilate with fever. He mentioned the moon, full moon the 19th. He'll stage the ritual, despite the loss. Sirens wail, church bells toll, in counterpoint. Gijda looks down the hill, over Stockholm rooftops, glimmering under moonlight and thin clouds of bloodsteam wafting above chimney stacks. Somewhere, Valerius limps through alley shadows, flesh knitting around silver wounds. Mind, already plotting a harvest to refill shattered vats. February 16th. Hospitals overflow with fire victims and catacomb smoke inhalation cases. Newspapers brand the conflagration, the midnight massacre, yet they still know nothing of the true monster loosed. Gijda sits beside Nyström's hospital bed, her chest bandaged tight. He reads Rittersverd's notes aloud. A vampire bound to a lunar cycle must drink from living throats under the first full moon beam to regenerate fully. Silver lodged beneath the skin slows return to strength. Decapitation, or heartstake must follow during that vulnerable window. Nyström's lids flutter. To kill him. Stake of silver. Heart. She manages a wan smile. Anders, Promise me you'll use my fletchette pistol. He nods, throat thick. Outside, wind rattles panes. Snow has ceased. The city lies blanketed, waiting. GHDA reviews. Hospital transfusion schedules notes an emergency blood drive. Announced for the evening of February 19th at St. Go Umlatrans Chapel, just off the Kungsiolmen River. Volunteers will line pews, veins bared, hearts pumping. A feast laid for a starving predator. He stands, eyes cold steel. You chose your altar, Valeris. I'll light the candles with silver flames. Night drips forward like thick resin. Valeris hides in the warren beneath the abandoned Noir Banterget freight station. Wounds from silver do not close. Skin knits, splits, weeps clear plasma tinged with mercury lightning. He injects himself with stolen O-negative until hands steady, yet hunger gnaws deeper than pain. He gazes at the waxing moon through a cracked skylight, whispering in Latin, in Polish, in Swedish, older than Gustav Vasa. In 4 nights the gate opens, and I shall emerge cleansed. He sets out instruments on a mahogany tray, a scalpel honed to monofilament, glass ampules of nightshade extract, silver fletchette, plucked from his thigh. He studies it how the metal resists his flesh like oil repels holy water. He licks his lips, eyes narrowing with a fanatic's gleam. No matter. I will bleed the city dry and forge bullets of their fears. He begins to write in his ledger hand, steady. Despite tremors recording names ripped from the hospital's public donor list. Elsa Lindholm, type AB. Johan Skog, type B. Anders Gösta, type O. He underlines the inspector's name, presses the nib until paper tears. Blood seeps from pen tip, staining the parchment with a dark blossom that seems to pulse. Remember this uneasy calm, listener, for the moon swells nightly, and with it the tide of crimson intent. Katarina's catacombs burn, yet their echoes linger, rattling door latches in every bedroom dream. Keep watch on your window this evening. If frost feathers into twin punctures, pray daylight arrives before a white-gloved shadow slips inside. The next chapter will follow the blood drive, where predator and hunter converge beneath chapel arches, one seeking rebirth, the other revenge. And in that hush between heartbeat and silence, we shall learn whether silver faith can pierce the heart of an immortal, or whether the Atlas vampire will drink deep enough to drown the city in perpetual night. Chapter 6. Veins like cathedral pipes. Listen now as February 17th, 1932, creeps over Stockholm with the hush of a conspirator. The waxing moon, not yet full but already swollen with icy light, hangs above the Kungsiolmen district like a single lidless eye. Snowflakes have stopped falling. In their stead, a brittle hoarfrost plates every window, every tram rail, every wrought iron gate with a glaze that snaps beneath the lightest touch. Even the river seems to breathe slower, as if the water itself waits for something terrible to arrive. Inside Precinct 14, the bare bulbs burn through the night. Detective Inspector Anders Gösta and the few constables still uninjured pore over blueprints of St. Go Umlatrans Chapel, a modest sanctuary attached to St. Giron's Hospital. The city has announced a great winter blood drive there for the evening of the 19th. Volunteers already line up to pledge their veins for the sick and frostbeat. What they do not know, cannot be told, is that the drive is bait. The plan is simple, in theory, lethal in practice. Load the hospital's blood collection tubing with microfilaments of silver wire, invisible inside the rubber, enough to scar supernatural flesh if fangs pierce the line. Conceal a ring of armed officers, each issued Nisum's fletchette pistols, above the transept rafters and behind confessionals. Flood the nave with low-wattage electric lamps tipped toward the stained glass windows. The first surge of moonlight will refract, revealing any silhouette that crosses the threshold. The instant Valerius drinks, or tries, they sever the power. Plunge the chapel into darkness pre-mapped for the constable's carbide headlamps, and fire a hail of silver. Nyström herself, chest bound in stiff canvas and ribs afire, dictates. These measures while flat on a hospital gurney in the precinct's garage, refusing to remain in bed. Her eyes glow fever bright. Stake or decapitation, only once he's disabled, she rasps. Anything less, and he will crawl away in pieces that knit themselves whole. She presses a small mahogany case into Gigita's palm. Inside lies a single souver, trocada narrow lance, used to puncture bone during autopsies. She has honed it to a needlepoint, straight through the sternum, 15 degrees upward. Twist twice. Gigita closes the case, nods once. He feels the weight of every fallen constable, every drained corpse, every citizen who now sleeps with windows nailed shut. This ends at the chapel, he vows. Evening of February 18th. A dress rehearsal. Constables smuggle crates of equipment through the chapel's southern sacristy, while the archbishop's representative mutters objections about desecration. Electricians string cables along choir, loft beams. The wire hums like caged lightning. Nuns from the adjacent infirmary set up cots and enamel basins, unaware that the extra police presence protects them from thirst incarnate. Gigsta walks the nave, counting steps from narthex to altar. 27. He kneels, palms the worn granite floor. Under this stone, centuries of whispered prayers still cling like dust in cracks. May they fortify the silver that soon must drink a darker prayer. A parish boy scurries up with a telegram. Gigita unfolds it. Only 7 words punched through pale paper. The floodgates open. Moon to Dua. Afe. He crushes the slip, jaw set. Valerius knows the trap and will come anyway, or wishes them to believe so. Midnight. February 18th slides into the 19th. A sudden warm front slithers over the city, melting ice until gutters gurgle like veins. Fog blooms, thick and sour, rolling low between buildings, swallowing gas lamps so their halos float like drowned suns. In that haze, rumor spreads. 2 morgue attendants at Nora Begravningsplatsen have gone missing, and screaming statues were heard before dawn. A tram conductor swears he glimpsed a man in a long coat riding the roof of carriage 41, white gloves gleaming as he vaulted onto a lamppost and vanished. Gigita cannot tell myth from hysteria now. Everything outside the ring of silver and gunpowder feels infected. He spends the final daylight hours, sharpening resolve, counting ammunition, whispering Psalm 91 beneath his breath, though he is no devout man. Nyström signs herself out of hospital against orders and arrives in a black serge overcoat, color stark against her ghost-pale face. Her bandaged ribs make each breath hiss. Pain reminds me I'm still mortal, she says. Let's keep it that way. February 19th, full moon night. Listen, listener, as dusk surrenders to moonrise. The great disk clears a ragged mantle of cloud and spills silver floodlight over Kungsleden. Every icicle catches the glow. Every puddle turns to quicksilver. And down inside St. Go, Latron's chapel, the lamps dim, choir loft murmurs, hush, and volunteers line each pew, sleeves rolled, hearts thudding through cloth. Gigita stands near the font, disguised in orderly whites, silver trocard taped along his forearm. Nyström waits behind a curtained confessional, fletchet pistol poised through a slit. 20 constables occupy hidden niches, pulses synced to the ticking of the clock above the apse. 21:30. Moonlight touches the high rose window, igniting its red glass depiction of St. George spearing the dragon. Gem shards of crimson scatter across the marble aisle, blood-colored constellations writhing up the center, toward the volunteers. A nun hums a hymn to steady nerves. 21:43. The front doors creak. A draft slithers down the nave, sweeping candles to guttering. Fog seeps at floor level, curling around ankles. Constables flick safeties. Gigita's heartbeat drums in his throat. Through the haze strides a lone figure. Tall coat, immaculate, hat brim shading eyes. But the gloves, they are not white. Tonight they are black leather, each knuckle sewn with a tiny silver cross that catches the candle flame. He carries no medical bag, no syringe. Instead, dangling from his left hand by thin tubing, sways an empty transfusion flask, a taunt. He walks unhurried to the first pew and bows gallantly to a volunteer, a young mother clutching rosary beads, then lifts his hat. The face beneath looks oddly rejuvenated, despite burns that still stipple the jawline. Eyes icy blue, lips curve. Nyström squeezes her trigger. A fleechette whistles. At the last instant he twitches, motion blurred, and the silver sliver buries in a pillar behind. Gasps, ripple, Gijta roars. Police, down, lamps cut. The chapel plunges into strobe chaos. Constables' carbide beams carve pale tunnels. Volunteers scream. The organ blasts a single dissonant chord as a terrified sacristan collapses on the keys. Implementing his own plan, Gijta dives at the blood drive supply trolley, severs tubing, sending silver-laced lines whipping like serpents. He flips the main power lever. Crack, a hidden arc lamp ignites above the altar, its reflector coated in powdered silver nitrate. An explosion of searing white engulfs the nave, bathing every surface in actinic brilliance. For mortals, it dazzles. For Valerius, if legend holds, it wounds. A high scream shreds the air, half human, half howl. In that white storm, the silhouette flares, coat smoking, gloves blistering. Constables open fire. Silver flechettes glitter like a swarm of meteors. Some miss, thudding into pews. 3 strike true, 1 in shoulder, 1 thigh, 1 base of neck. Valerius spins, staggers, black blood splattering marble in sizzling droplets. He bolts, impossibly fast, and leaps the communion rail. But Gijta anticipated. 2 constables yank on concealed cables. Steel shutters slam over side exits. Only one path remains, straight up the center aisle, toward the font where Gijta stands planted. Valerius charges. Silver flechettes protrude from his flesh like broken thermometers, smoking. His mouth peels back to reveal elongated canines, tips stained nightshade purple. Yet his legs falter, limbs jerking as silver poisons his nerves. Gijta's world narrows to a tunnel. Moonlight, fog, the oncoming shape of hunger. He rips away the tape, brandishes the silver trocar. They collide beneath St. George's painted lance. Valerius claws, staggering. Gijta rams, the trocar beneath. The zipoid process feels it pierce cartilage, catch on sternum. With a grunt he drives upward, 15 degrees. Twisting once, twice. Bone yields with a sick wet pop. Valerius convulses. A sound escapes him. Not a roar, but a long exhale, like bellows expelling centuries of hoarded dust. His eyes widen, pupils whitening to a milk glass glaze. He tries to speak. Only froth emerges, swirls of blackened blood, flecked with silver. Gijta wrenches free, steps back. Valerius sways. For a heartbeat, his expression is almost peaceful, like a man glimpsing some distant, sunlit memory. Then legs buckle. He crashes onto mosaic tiles, limbs jittering. Constables rush, pinning wrists with iron shackles inlaid with silver filigree. The chapel hushes. Volunteers huddle, some weeping, others staring in shock. Nyström limps forward, pistol smoking, and kneels beside the fallen predator. She places fingertips to carotid punctures that have fed on so many. No pulse answers, yet she keeps her hand there, waiting, counting. 10 seconds, 20, a flicker. Valerius's eyes snap open. He laughs, a hollow rasp. Silver deafens the heart. But you forget, doctor, hearts can be replaced. He yanks his shackled hands upward. Skin sloughs like gloves turning inside, out, under torn flesh, muscle twitches, stitching. The trocar, still lodged in cardiac bone, shudders edging outward. Nyström shouts. Constables fumble reloads. But Valerius moves first, snapping chains. He lunges toward the rose window. Fléchettes pepper his back again. Some sink, others glance off bone. He smashes the stained glass with one explosive elbow. Crimson shards and moon-filtered snow explode outward. Frigid wind screams through the wound. He clambers halfway through before Gösta, acting on raw instinct, grabs a fallen silver-lace transfusion line and loops it around Valerius's neck. A garrote of liquid silver and rubber. He hauls back, with every gram of grief and fury. Valerius thrashes, claws gouging stone, lungs pumping tar-black mist. He twists, tries to bite the line, but silver burns his lips. Gösta feels ribs threaten to crack from strain, arms on fire. Nyström staggers beside him, wraps her hands over his, adds her weight despite searing pain. Together they pull, flesh hisses where the tubing digs. Bone cracks, a ghastly snap echoed by shrieks of volunteers. Valerius's head lolls, eyes boiling white. Yet still he claws for the moonlight beyond, boots kicking shards across pews. Then sainted chance intervenes. The angel in the rose window, the very pane Valerius shattered topples free, its lead spine still spiked with ferrobar. The weight drops like judgment, striking Valerius square between shoulder blades, driving him back into the chapel with a thunder of glass and iron dot. Something vital gives way. The souver troca dislodged, pivots beneath his sternum, and with the impact rams fully through the heart. A gout of blood jets, sizzling where it touches silver wire. Valerius arches, silent, as if sound itself deserts him. His form shudders, collapses into a heap that seems suddenly smaller, as though centuries of borrowed stature deflate in an instant. Silence, save for the crackle of votive candles. Moonlight spills through the ruined window, painting the corpse in ethereal blue. It does not move again. Nyström sags, and Gösta catches her before she Constables encircle the fallen predator, muzzles trained, breaths visible in moon-cold air. No one speaks until the clock above the apse tolls midnight. A single chime that trembles on crystal fragments littering the nave. They have slain the Atlas vampire. Or so they believe. Dawn. February 20th, 1932. Newspapers cannot decide between Valerian monster slain and mystery man dead in Chapel Fracas. Officials seal the church, call for ecclesiastical cleansing. Doctors perform a post-mortem under Nyström's supervision. But when scalpels slice, the flesh behaves. Oddly, tissue granulates into gray ash around silver edges. Organs lose cohesion once removed from the ribcage, collapsing into viscous sludge. There is no traditional embalming possible. They store what remains inside a triple-locked morgue drawer, lined with silver mesh, guarded round the clock. Gösta signs a chain of custody sheet at 4:10, exhaustion shredding his every nerve. He gazes at the charred, shriveled corpse, no longer formidable, almost pitiable, then closes the drawer on centuries of terror. For the first time in weeks, he allows himself hope that Stockholm can breathe. He does not notice the faintest smear of black fluid seeping from the drawer's corner, nor the subtle clink as one of Nyström's fléchettes lodged beneath ribs slides free to the metal tray below. Remember, listener, how easy it is to mistake a heartbeat's lull for silence permanent. For in stories of blood, there is always a final pulse hiding beneath the hush, waiting, coiling, rehearsing resurrection. Chapter 7 will wake that last echo and carry us into the shadows beyond victory's fragile candle, where debts of blood must yet be paid. Chapter 7. Ashes that remember blood. Picture Stockholm at the ragged edge of February 22nd, 1932. 3 nights have crawled by since the chapel battle. Snow once brightened the city. Now it hangs yellow-brown between rooftops, trapped by coal, soot, and lingering fog. Every cobblestone still seems to echo the gunshots and screams that rocked St. Go Omlotron's nave. Yet citizens force themselves back. To routine shop bells jingle, Trams clatter, cafes pour strong coffee into trembling hands. Newspapers trumpet victory, printing lurid sketches of a fanged fiend laid low by brave officers. Headlines swear, the nightmare is finished. Listen closer. Under those front-page boasts is a hush that feels unreal, like a theater right after the curtain falls, when the orchestra hasn't started packing, but the actors have already slipped off stage. In that tense lull, a whisper curls along alley gutters and tavern tables. The corpse of the Atlas vampire is not where it should be. Detective Inspector Anders Gösta surfaces from 13 hours of dreamless collapse to find a constable hammering his flat door at dawn. The young officer's face is the color of thawed tallow. Breath steams as he stammers, "Surmorg drawer 17B. It's empty." Gösta's pulse slams him awake. He drags yesterday's coat over sleep-wrinkled shirt, revolver still holstered. Out on the street, a thaw wind channels oily rivulets through sludge-gray snow. The constable drives him in a rattling Model T toward the Royal Pathology Institute. They arrive to chaos, orderlies arguing, nurses sobbing, a chief coroner white-knuckling paperwork like it might bite. Drawer 17B stands open beneath sputtering fluorescence. Inside, only a scatter of fine gray grit, like fireplace ash sifted through gauze, and Nyström's flechette, lying dull as pewter. The Somerton-style hard steak of the monster has vanished too. A faint, acrid smell, half ozone, half rotted roses, clings to the metal tray. Gösta inhales once, coughs. Who is on duty? A trembling orderly raises his hand. "Me, Inspector. I checked the body hourly. 3 o'clock, all secure. At 4:10, I stepped out. 15 minutes, tops to fetch a docket stamp. When I returned, drawer was ajar, alarm untriggered." He swallows. No footprints, no fingerprints, door bolts untouched. Gösta's gaze rakes overhead vents. Each grill screws tight, yet a jagged streak of charcoal stains the wall above the drawer, arcing upward like soot from a candle snuffed too violently. Nyström arrives on crutches, still bandaged. Her eyes widen at the empty niche. She leans on the metal, knuckles white, ash face. She whispers. Some legends say the undead crumble when pierced by consecrated metal, but their essence seeks a host, a vessel to recall here. She picks up the flechette, weighs it. If the trocar's gone, he or something that serves him removed it to free the binding. She meets Gösta's stare. It means the hunt isn't over. It's molting. They retreat to Gösta's office, blinds drawn against weak sun. A map sprawls across the desk, pins marking every site touched by Valerius's shadow. Nyström traces a finger along the thread connecting St. Gome-Lotron's chapel to the morgue, then further west toward the icy reach of Lake Moonlit. "Water," she murmurs. "He always cleanses." In water scene reports from Malmö and Gothenburg, mention bodies drained near river docks, days after each supposed final death. Gösta recalls the freight station layer's rusted pipes emptying into Mälaren. He circles a point on the shoreline, Vesterbrunn Bridge, a skeletal span half finished. Its underworks a forest of steel pilings and tar-sleeping barges. Construction halted all winter. No night watch. The perfect chrysalis. They dispatched 2 squads to sweep the pylons. Frost clings to rivets like pearl spores. Officers find nothing but gold droppings and lengths of rope. Yet on one girder, someone has scratched a sigil. Twin serpents coiled about a chalice. Beneath it, 3 droplets carved so deeply, the metal burrs inward. Nyström photographs the mark, cheeks blanched. Later, Professor Rittersverd's telegram arrives. Sigil means viscera, vivat alchemical, for let the lifeblood live. Ritual regeneration requires host flesh plus original heart object. Nyström translates aloud, and shivers. He needs a living body to seed with whatever remained inside the trocar. As if summoned, telephone rings, an urgent call from police. A vagrant's corpse has washed onto the embankment, skin chalk white, abdomen slit as though something burrowed out not in. No blood remains, but heart cavity holds a cavity of its own, just big enough to have housed a slender silver spike. They rush to the scene, river mist coiling around boots. Night approaches. Fog thickens, suffocated by sewage stink, and thaws. Rot. The dead vagrant stares upward with eyes clouded like milky quartz. Nyström kneels, studies the incision. Transference attempt failed, chosen host to malnourished. She stands, steadying against dizziness. He'll try again, needs healthy, unwounded tissue. Somewhere shielded, yet accessible to fresh bodies. Gage-tossed gaze drifts to the half-built Tekniska, Hague-Skolan subway shafts. The tunnels run beneath crags of granite, sealed off with cribbing and canvas. No official work crews until spring thaw. He and Nyström trade a wordless nod. February 23rd. Moon now a waning coin. Sundown bleeds ochre across icy puddles as the pair descend a scaffolding ladder into the subway excavations. Only 2 constables accompany others, still in hospital. Air grows warm, damp, redolent of rust and old dynamite. Miners' lamps cast trembling halos on rough blasted walls. They reach a cavern, where dynamite exposed a natural fault-black water pools shin deep, reflecting lamp glare like oil. A smell greets them: copper, musk, nightshade, bloom. On the far side stands a makeshift altar, piles of bone-white bricks, topped by a surgical tray holding the silver trocar, now blackened with clotted gore. Beside the tray waits a figure in orderly garb, back turned. He hums a lullaby. Nyström recognizes the tune Swedish folk cradle song, the same Valerius hummed in his freight station den. She raises her pistol, hands where the man turns. It is not Valerius. It is orderly Henrik Lindholm, the morgue attendant who reported the body missing. His pupils have dilated huge, irises ringed in sickly ice blue, skin waxy, veins mapping his neck like ink. He smiles lazily. "Dr. Nyström," he purrs, voice layered Henrik's baritone beneath a whisper that seems to echo off water, even when mouth is still. "Thank you for your flechets." They tasted of moonlit iron, Gigita's stomach locks. Valerius, the same reborn, in fresh clay. Henrik's lips peel, revealing new-grown canines pink at the root. Fascinating. The plasticity of marrow. Host accepted the heartseed readily, though it will burn out in months. I'll need a more permanent vessel. He regards Nyström, eyes glimmering. Your intellect, your bloodline untainted by war poison's ideal. Nyström's finger tightens on the trigger, but Henrik, Valerius crooks a finger. Behind them, shadows rise, 3 more shapes, a hospital nurse, a tram conductor, and a seminary student tall, with slit torsos, stitched crudely. They shamble forward, each clutching a tool, bone saw, pickaxe, syringe. Their pupils glow faint. Valerius murmurs, "Insurance, in case negotiations fail." Gigita steps between, revolver leveled. Valerius sighs. "Inspector, you fight entropy without comprehension. Step aside and I will leave your city tonight. Resist, and Stockholm becomes my feeding nursery." He gestures to a rust-spattered crate, marked Plasma Stockholm Blood Bank. Dozens of pouches lie packed in ice. "I've provisions to facilitate." Travel Nyström shakes her head. "You cannot bargain with those you slaughter." She lifts a canvas satchel inside, rattles a thermite charge, stolen from demolition supplies. "We end the vein here." Valerius's smile wilts. "Thermite consumes even silver," he says softly, "but it also consumes flesh you wish to keep." He throws out a hand. The proto-hosts surge. Chaos ignites. Lamplight jerks wildly as water churns. A bone saw whistles past Gigita, nicking his ear. Nyström fires flechettes over stitching into the tram conductor's sternum, dropping him. In a hiss of black vapor, the nurse swings a syringe. Gigita blocks, slamming revolver butt across her temple. She reels, flesh tearing where silver ring contacts skin, shriveling like paper thrown on flame. Valerius and Nyström circle each other across the flooded floor, he agile despite host's body, she wheezing from rib pain. He snatches the trocar from the tray, twirling it like a rapier. Do you know why silver hurts me, doctor? Because it mirrors. It shows the body what lies beneath, the absence of soul, and that terrifies the cells. He lunges. She parries with thermite satchel, strap looped around wrist. The trocar slices canvas, sparks scatter as powder spills. Valerius recoils. Thermite grains sizzle on wet stone, tiny suns screaming white. He hisses, shielding host eyes. Jijta empties his revolver bullets, hammer Valerius's torso, trails of ash pluming. But the monster pushes on, flesh knitting, even as holes smoke. He hurls the trocar. It whistles through air, skewers Gijta's shoulder, pinning him to timber cribbing. Pain explodes. Vision whites. Valerius advances on Nyström, who scrambles across slick stone. He grabs her hair, dragging her upright. The heart is resilient, he whispers, but the brain, that I shall save her. He bares fangs. She jams her thumb into the thermite detonator. Sparks dance inside the satchel. Valerius's eyes widen too late. Thermite does not explode. It erupts a white-hot cataract, cascading like molten stars. Nyström thrusts the satchel against Valerius's chest and leaps backward. The concoction consumes oxygen, roars to 2,500 degrees Celsius in a heartbeat. Valerius screams, host lungs shredding, silver cross stitches, glowing cherry, skin sagging like wax in a blast furnace. Light blinds, water flashes to steam, raining scald. The proto-hosts collapse, veins unraveling into strings of tar. Jijta rips free of the timber, agony searing, and tackles Nyström behind a granite berm. They huddle as molten iron tears through rock, carving a channel into bedrock. The smell of burning blood and ozone fuses the air. When light dims, only crackle of cooling slag remains. They stand. Thermite has scoured the cavern floor to a black lake of glass. In its center lies a fused statue of char, indistinct, no limbs, no features. The trocar molten glints half embedded in slag. Nothing stirs. Nyström sways, shoulders heaving with saw-laden breaths. Jijta clutches his bleeding arm, stumbles to her side. Together, they watch the last embers wink out like dying. Stars overhead, timbers groan. Demolition vibrations have loosened rock. They retreat, limping through tunnels, until pre-dawn air slaps their faces. Sirens approach, fire brigade, medical wagons. From a nearby hilltop, the first smear of sunrise pushes Violet above the Baltic, sinks onto a crate, head in hands. It's over, she whispers, yet her tone questions. Gijta gazes east, where light edges black water, unsure whether dawn feels different, lighter. Then he notices soot smearing his coat sleeve. Embedded in that soot is a perfect oval imprint, smooth, glossy scale, no bigger than a fingernail, reflecting sunrise like polished ruby. He flicks it. The scale clings. Beneath its translucent curve, something pulses faintly. 1, 2. Silent beats. He pockets the scale, saying nothing. Later that morning, Professor Rittersvord telephones, voice tremoring. Inspector, my research found a coda. When a vampire's heart is pierced by its own instrument, essence fragments into what the ancients called blood-filled blood scales. Each scale can seed anew given warmth and shadow. He pauses. Destroy any you find, quickly. Jijta stares at his closed fist. Warmth trickles through glove like spilled brandy. Remember, listener, how victory's taste can sour when hindsight whispers unfinished lines. For the city may celebrate, choirs may sing, but a single hidden drop can rewrite the libretto of horror, and hearts, human or otherwise, are easily tempted to cradle forbidden embers, especially when grief and obsession blur mercy's edge. In our final chapter, we will see where the last blood scale travels, and whether Stockholm truly earns dawn or whether crimson twilight will settle forever over Atlasgatan's silent snow. Chapter 8. Scarlet Quiet. Whispering Snow. Stockholm breathes beneath a slate gray. Dawn on February 25, 1932. The fires, the screams, the silver hail in the chapel, they are all yesterday's thunder, damped by newsboys who now shout of victory, of real story heroics, of monsters turned to soot. Streetcars rattle again, bakeries vent cinnamon, steam, and children skate circles on the thin, groaning ice of construction. Yet in the marrow of the city, a hush persists, like the moment the orchestra lowers its bows, but the final chord still quivers in the rafters. Detective Inspector Anders Gösta stands at his apartment window, watching commuters blur into gray. Drizzle. His stitched shoulder throbs, reminding him every heartbeat that true quiet seldom lasts. In his pocket lies the blood scale, a single ruby oval no wider than a thumbnail, weightless, yet warm as a sleeping pulse. He has not slept since he pocketed it. The warmth grows stronger each hour. He hears the apartment door open. Dr. Ingrid Nyström, leaning on cane, ribs bandaged tight. She drops a newspaper beside the kettle. City purified by silver flame. Valerius era ends. Her eyes linger on his fist. You still have it. He doesn't answer. The scale now seems to tick like a metronome in time with his own pulse. She sets a tin box on the table inside. White-hot fragments of thermite. Professor Rittersverd swears flame and consecrated lime together will end every trace. We grind the scale, burn it, tonight. Gösta nods, yet some dark chord in him vibrates at the thought of destroying it. The memory of decades policing brutality, the lives he couldn't save. A rasping whisper threads his thoughts. What if you could stop death forever? He pockets the scale again. Evening drapes the city in wet violet. Fog coils low as a funeral shawl when they descend to Rittersverd's laboratory beneath Uppsala's north wing. Vaulted stone, seeped in candlelight and dust. The professor waits, spectacles glinting above a crucible already fiery white. Hurry, he urges. The fragment grows by feeding on warmth. If it breaches a heartbeat or a drop of fresh blood, it will seed anew. Gösta's hand stalls over the crucible. Visions flood him. Lily Lindström smiling shy at a riverbank. Constables fallen beneath Atlasgatan flames. Nyström doubled in pain yet unbroken. Then, a different vision. Streets where no parent buries a child. No plague digs, mass graves. Because one small miracle scale gives humanity mastery over loss. A surgeon's dream, Valerius had whispered. Nyström sees hesitation, voice brittle. Anders, drop it. He meets her gaze. Grief, fatigue, stubborn hope clash behind his eyes. A tremor jolts his arm. The scale pulses scarlet. He tightens. Fingers, feels it liquefy. A warm ooze seeping through glove seams. Pain spikes skin, burning ice cold. The whisper becomes words. Let me mend every wound. And a lattice of dark veins crawls up his wrist. Nyström snatches tongs from the bench, clamps his wrist. Anders, fight it. He wrenches away. Crimson beads pop along his palm, sizzling on stone. The professor chants, half-forgotten Latin, flinging salt and ash. Lamps flicker. The room chills. Inside Gösta's mind, two voices duel, his own hoarse oath to protect, and Valerius's coaxing promise of everlasting control. Images blizzard, Lily drained on a sofa, child corpses from older cases, his own father wheezing to death on the Soms mud. He sways, breathing steam. Then, another memory stabs through. Nyström laughing once over bitter coffee, telling him even broken bones knit, if splinted in time. He sees constables binding timber over collapsed ribs, sees ordinary courage in candlelit morgues, sees common men and women choosing life despite terror. With an anguished cry, he drives fist toward The crucible Nyström shoves his arm the last inch. Liquid scarlet spatters, molten white. A shriek erupts not from throat or furnace, but from the very air like hot steel, plunged into glacial water. Flame geysers blue. Stench of seared roses fills the lab. Gichta collapses. Nyström drags him clear as Rittersverd hurls a jar of holy water that hisses on the crucible rim. Light gutters when sight returns. Only gray ash coats, white coals. No ruby ember remains. Nyström cradles Gichta's scorched hand. The veins are blackened but shrinking, color returning inch by inch. She presses forehead to his knuckles, tears carving soot on her cheeks. March snow thaws into muddy crocus beds. Official inquests close. The Atlas vampire declared extinguished. Rittersverd stores the crucible slag in a lead reliquary, sunk under chapel flagstones poured with consecrated cement. Nyström resumes autopsy duty. Silver fletchet, now a paperweight on her desk. Gija returns to patrol streets that suddenly seem smaller, lighter, though every clock chime reminds him of blood that might have spilled. Life inches on. Yet some nights, when tavern laughter drifts thin through frosted panes, Nyström glimpses Gijda staring into black coffee, fingertips tracing a faint scar at his wrist. Neither speaks of the whisper they banished, nor of the truth they both know. Ash can remember blood, and legends slumber in the marrow of every city, waking whenever grief and hunger entwine. But for now Stockholm sleeps beneath quiet snow. Street lamps burn warm halos, and somewhere on Atlasgatan, a tenant waters a pot of lilies on a windowsill that once framed horror, unaware that courage, stitched with silver and flame, won them another ordinary dawn. If this tale gripped your heartbeat and chilled your bones, stay with us in the dark. Ring the bell so you'll never miss the next real story that creeps from history's shadows. Share this night with a friend, because fear, like blood, flows stronger when it's shared.